Learning objectives. Explain the evolution of invertebrates. Determine the characteristics of invertebrates. Identify the different phylums of invertebrates of the phylogenetic. Describe the difference between the 11 phylums of invertebrates. The evolution of invertebrates. Invertebrates came from simple sponges over 570 million years ago. Over time, they adapted and evolved in many different ways, with the first notable trait of evolution being specialization, or the ability for an organism to adapt to its environment. Another notable trait of their evolution was anatomical symmetry, whether that be bilateral symmetry, radial symmetry, or asymmetry. Invertebrates have evolved to have a large range of different ecosystems that they live in. Invertebrates' physiology has evolved to survive in different temperatures for each species.
This slide is a quick overview of the 11 phylums of invertebrates that are broken into 5 groups on the phylogenetic tree.
Common characteristics of all invertebrates. The majority of invertebrates live underwater or have some stage of their life in water. Most invertebrates survive in shallow water communities. Salinity content can affect the morphology of the invertebrates who live in ocean water. Many dangers affect invertebrates as they live in such a wide range of ecosystems, especially for sea creatures, such as temperature, salinity content, water depth, ocean currents. Invertebrates can have a large importance to the ecosystem, such as aid the decomposition of organic waste, involved with the process of plant pollination.
Some invertebrates live on land. The most known are earthworms, insects, and spiders. These invertebrates have special structures to allow them to live on land. Earthworms have mucus to keep their bodies from drying out. Insects and spiders are waterproof and adapted to conserve water. Over 95% of the 2 million currently known species are invertebrates. They inhabit every habitat on Earth. Invertebrates lack a backbone. Now we're going to look into the subtopics of invertebrates. The first one being Porifera, which has 5,500 species. They're more commonly known as sponges that can range from a few millimeters to a few meters. Most sponges are hermaphrodites. They exhibit sequential hermaphroditism and function first as one sex and then as the other. They represent a long lineage that diverged from other animals early in the history of evolution, which makes them basal animals. Filter feeding is drawn through their pores and into a central cavity named spongicle, which then flows out of the sponge through a large opening named osculum. The body of a sponge consists of 2 layers of cells which are separated by a gelatinous region called mesohyl. The next phylum is Cnidaria, which has 10,000 species. It's an ancient phylum of eumetazoans, or true animals, one of the first to have diverged from others and originated about 680 million years ago. This phylum group includes corals, jellies, and hydras. The basic anatomy of a cnidarian is a central digestive compartment known as the gastrovascular cavity, and a single opening that serves both the mouth and anus, with 2 variations, the largely sessile polyp and the more motile medusa. Their tentacles are armed with batteries of cnidocytes, which are cells unique to cnidarians. The next phylum is Platyhelminthes, which has 2,000 species, more commonly known as flatworms, which include tapeworms, planarians, and flukes. Flatworms gain their names because of their notably thin bodies that are flattened dorsoventrally. They have bilateral symmetry and a central nervous system. Flatworms can be as small as microscopic, while some tapeworms can grow into more than 20 meters long. Flatworms are coelomates, meaning they lack a body cavity. Their flat body increases their surface area, allowing them to place all of their cells close to water in the surrounding environment. The next phylum is Cindermata, which has 2,900 species. This phylum includes 2 groups: rotifers, which are microscopic animals with a complex organ system, and canthocephalans, which are highly modified parasites of vertebrates. For rotifers, they have around 1,800 species and are tiny animals that live in freshwater, marine, and damp soil habitats. They range in size from 50 picometers to 2 millimeters, are multicellular, and have specialized organ systems. Instead of a gastrovascular cavity, rotifers have an alimentary canal, which is a digestive tube with two openings, a mouth and an anus. The internal organs of rotifers sit within the pseudocolumn, which is a body cavity that is not lined by mesoderm. Some species consist of only females that produce more females through parentogenesis, which is a type of asexual reproduction. Some rotifers can produce sexually under certain conditions. In these cases, the embryos will remain dormant for some time before they break dormancy and develop into another generation of females. The other group is acanthocephalans, which have around 1,100 species and are sexually reproductive parasites. They lack a digestive tract and are usually less than 20 centimeters long. They are commonly called spiny head worms because they have curved hooks in them. Even though they are in their own phylum, acanthocephalans have been shown to be originated from within the group of Rotifera. All acanthocephalans have complex life cycles with two or more hosts. The next phylum is Lophophorates. This phylum includes Ectoprocta, which has 4,500 species, and Brachiopoda, which has 335 species. Ectoprocta are covered by a tough exoskeleton and live in colonies. Brachiopoda can be mistaken for clams or mollusks, a stalk that connects and anchors them to their substrate. They also have a crown of cilia known as a lophophore. Ectoprocs are colonial animals that resemble clumps of moss. The colony is encased in a hard exoskeleton studded with pores through which the lophophores extend. Most ectoprocs live in the sea and are sessile animals. Some live in lakes and rivers. Several of their species are important reed builders. Brachiopoda or lamb shells resemble clams and other hinge-shelled mollusks. The difference is that the two halves of the brachiopod shell are dorsal and ventral compared to the lateral shells that clams have. All brachiopods are marine animals. Most live attached to the seafloor by a stalk. They will open their shell slightly to allow water to flow in through the lophophore. Mollusca has 100,000 species. Mollusks include snails, clams, and octopuses. They have a soft body, and in many species, the body is protected by a hard shell. There are 8 major clades, with the most known 3 being Gateropoda, which are snails and slugs, Bivalvia, which are clams, oysters, and other bivalves, and Cephalopoda, which are squids, octopuses, cuttlefish, and chambered nautiluses. Mollusks are celiomates, and their body is made up of 3 parts: a muscular foot for movement, a visceral mass containing most of their internal organs, and a mantle, which is a fold of tissue that drapes over the visceral mass and secretes a shell if there is one present. For some mollusks, the mantle extends beyond the visceral mass and produces a water-filled chamber called the mantle cavity, which holds the gills, anus, and excretory pores. Many mollusks feed using a radula, which is a strap-like organ. Many have separate sexes, and their gonads are in the visceral mass. However, some snails are hermaphrodites. The next phylum is Annelida, which has 16,500 species. Annelids are known as segmented worms. They are in a separate group from other worms because of their segmented body. The most known annelid is the earthworm. Although this phylum consists of mostly marine and freshwater species, split into 2 groups: Aurantia and Sedentaria. Cetaceans are a large and diverse group, and most are marine. They are immobile, and some swim around plankton while others crawl on or burrow in the seafloor. Most are predators. Others are graders that feed on multicellular algae. This group includes some relatively immobile species. In many Aurantians, each body segment has a pair of prominent paddle-like structures called parapodia that function in locomotion. Sedentarians tend to be less mobile, and some species burrow slightly through marine sediments or soil. Others live within tubes that protect and support their soft bodies. Tube-dwelling sedentarians often have elaborate gills or tentacles used for filter feeding. The next phylum is Nematoda, which has 25,000 species. Nematodes are also known as roundworms. They're extremely abundant and diverse in their soil and aquatic habitats. Their most protective feature is the rough cuticle that coats their entire body. Many species are parasites to plants and animals. They range in size from less than 1 millimeter to more than 1 meter long, and often taper to a fine tip at the posterior end to a blunter tip at the anterior end. Nematodes are from an alimentary canal and lack a circulatory system. Nutrients are transported throughout the body through fluid in the pseudocolumn. Nematodes play an important role in the decomposition and nutrient cycling. The next phylum is Arthropoda, which has 1 million species. The majority of known animal species are arthropods. They have segmented exoskeletons and jointed appendages. This category includes insects, crustaceans, and arachnids. Zoologists estimate that there are about a billion, or 10 to the 18th power, arthropods living on Earth. Biologists hypothesize that the diversity and success of arthropods are related to their body plan. The body parts have well-developed sensory organs, including eyes, olfactory receptors, and antennae, that function in both touch and smell. The next phylum is Ectodermata, which has 7,000 species. This group includes sand dollar sea stars and urchins. These organisms are part of the deuterostome clade and are bilaterally symmetrical as larvae, but not as adults. They use a network of internal canals to pump water into different parts of the body to move and feed. Echinoderms are coelomates. They have a thin epidermis that covers an endoskeleton of hard, calcareous plants, and most species are prickly from skeletal bumps and spines. Something that is unique to ectoderms is the water vascular system, which is a network of hydraulic canals branching into extensions called toothi that function for locomotion and feeding. Echinoderms use sexual reproduction that involves separate male and females. Living echinoderms are divided into 5 clades. The last of the 11 phylum are Chordata, which has 57,000 species. More than 90,000 of all known chordate species have backbones and are vertebrates. The phylum Chordata includes 2 groups of invertebrates, the lancelets and the tunicates. Vertebrates are bilaterally symmetrical coelomates with segmented bodies.
The most fascinating invertebrate, Coleoptera, also known as beetles and weevils. Class Insecta, order Coleoptera, number of families 166. The head of the beetle is a tough protective castle with chewing mouthparts connected to the prothorax by a flexible membranous neck. Weevils, also known as Curculionidae, and other beetles with an elongated rostrum or mouthparts lack a clypeus. Beetles have evolved numerous morphological and behavioral adaptations that enable them to survive and reproduce in wildly different habitats. Pterodactyl beetles and weevils have thickened exoskeletons with fused elytra and waxy coating to prevent desiccation. By closing their spiracles, beetles can minimize water vapor loss through respiration. Other desert species may rely on a thick coating of insulating setae or may remain buried where temperatures are significantly lower during the heat of the day. Some species, such as aquatic beetles, are flat and streamlined, enable them to dive quickly into loose sand. Beetles capable of flight increase their chances of avoiding predation, locating mates, and finding food, and also boost their ability to colonize new habitats. Weevils, ground beetles, and rove beetles living at high elevations and exposed in windy conditions often lose their wings. A small number of beetles have become important economic pests as a result of their feeding and egg-laying activities on stored products, pastures, crops, and timber. Beetles feeding on legumes, tomatoes, potatoes, melons, gourds, and grains are some of humanity's greatest competitors for food. In temperate forests throughout the world, beetles generally attack trees that are already under stress from lack of water and nutrition. Bark beetles mine branches, twigs, cones, or roots, and the most destructive species attack the trunks of living trees. Question number 1. What are some dangers that affect invertebrates? A. Temperature. B. Salinity content. C. Water depth. D. All the above. If you answer D, you are correct.
Question number 2. Brachiopoda belongs to what phylum? Porifera, Lophophorates, Platyhelminthes, or Echinodermata? If you answered B, then you are correct.
Question number 3. How many groups of Annelida are there? A. 2, B. 3, C. 5, D. 9. If you answer A. 2,